live right now. Hello, my name is Elena Ames, and I have Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura Miller. Hi.
We are members and representatives of Minneapolis Socionics Society, and we are so sorry we missed you last month where we had our first meetup meeting, and we had 2 hours of fun discussing what socionics is. We played games and we did a lot of practical exercises. So this video is the attempt to show you what we talked about, and this video will be very short, not for 2 hours. So what is socionics? Well, the easiest way would be is to probably give you a little more situational. So like many of us had a lot of situations where we were simply unhappy among certain group of people. We tried to adapt, we tried to adjust, we even thought the same way, we behaved the same way, but always experienced failure after failure. And here's the paradox. We did not know that the nature created us for something else. There is a belief in the subconscious of some people that everything could be changed. All you need to do is to want to change and try really, really hard. And the second belief is that the destructive assurance that everybody should be the same. Therefore, there is a fear to be that white crow if for some reason you feel different. Such chase for false leadership will multiply misfits and losers. It is time to remember that you are not a blank sheet of paper and nobody can draw anything or write anything there. You cannot change who you are. You cannot improve your personality. You were born with those genes and the framework. Socionics came from Jung's theory, and it also explains how people receive and process information. We would call it informational metabolism. We will not discuss the meaning of this term in depth right now, but I can give you one example what metabolism is. So here's the phone. I'm going to give you the phone. Okay, so this is the reality, me giving you the phone or giving you information through either my words or my behavior. And so it's very simple. And there are two ways to interpret that act or information that I just gave you. And you probably felt many situations like this before. And one way to react would be you can be very thankful. You can thank me. Thank you so much for giving me the phone. Well, the other way is to get really offended. How dare you? Don't you think I can afford it? Well, this is the difference how different people process information differently. And I'm sure you've been in many situations like this when you meant one thing, but people reacted differently. So let's talk about those other people. Do you ever get irritated that some people just don't plan at all, and they kind of go with the flow? Or maybe you are one of those people and you get irritated at the stubborn planners and think that the life can throw you some really hard surprises, and it is better to accept life as is and be flexible and adaptable. But maybe you focus on long-term goals and get confused how to get there. Well, sort of you don't really see what steps to take and need some assistance. Well, if you're one of those people, you definitely need somebody like me because I immediately see those steps to achieve your long-term goals, not girls, maybe girls too. Based on the knowledge of socionics, we can predict the group dynamics and the comfort level of relationships in that group. And we can tell if this group of people is going to be successful, comfortable, and have minimum of conflict. Laura will go and tell you about the difference between Myers-Briggs and Socionics.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so if you're familiar with the Myers-Briggs system, you probably know that they use 4 different dichotomies to measure human personality. Socionics actually uses a total of 15 dichotomies, so it goes a lot more into depth than the Myers-Briggs does. I'm not going to talk about all 15 of the dichotomies, but I am going to talk about the 4 dichotomies that Socionics shares with Myers-Briggs. And the first dichotomy is extroversion versus introversion. And in Socionics, extroverts perceive reality as it is. So they are objective. And extroverts tend to be active and initiating. And it can be socially initiating, but it doesn't have to be. It could just be initiating in terms of undertaking new projects and challenges. In Myers-Briggs, they often talk about extroverts as being energized by social interaction and introverts energized by being alone. And one difference between Myers-Briggs and Socionics is in Socionics, you could have somebody that's a logical type, but extroverted. And logical types in Socionics, they don't necessarily need as much social interaction, but because they're extroverts, they're still going to be active individuals. They'll undertake a lot of different projects, maybe not necessarily pursuing any one of them in any great depth. Whereas somebody that's an introvert but is an ethical type, and ethical types in Socionics, they tend to need more human interaction, socializing. However, they may not be the ones inclined to initiate those interactions, but they will very much appreciate those interactions. So that's one key difference that I did want to point out. So the introverts in Socionics, they're more concerned with their own attitudes towards reality. So in a way, they are more subjective than extroverts are. They tend to be less active and initiating, and instead they tend to respond to other people's initiative, and they tend to be more concerned with depth than breadth. So introverts tend to have fewer interests that they pursue, but they pursue the interests that they do have in more depth, more deeply. The second dichotomy is sensing versus intuition. And in both Myers-Briggs and Socionics, the sensing types tend to be more realistic, more detail-focused, more interested in practice than theories. Whereas the intuitive types tend to be more idealistic, big picture oriented, and more focused on theory than practice. The third dichotomy is logic versus ethics. And this is analogous to the thinking versus feeling dichotomy in the Myers-Briggs. Now, in the Myers-Briggs, it's important to remember that thinking people definitely have feelings, and feeling people can definitely be logical and have thoughts. It's really a matter of how one prefers to make decisions, what kinds of information they use. So thinking types in Myers-Briggs are inclined to make decisions using logical and objective criteria, whereas feeling types in Myers-Briggs tend to make decisions on the basis of feelings and values. Now, in Socionics, we call this dichotomy logic versus ethics. So logical types in Socionics are focused on inanimate objects, logical relationships, and the objective truth. Now, like I said before, they don't tend to be as focused on interacting with people than ethical types are. So sometimes logical extroverts in Socionics, they can be mistaken as introverts for that reason. Whereas the ethical types in Socionics are focused on emotional experience, human relationships, and subjective attitudes. And because of this focus on human relationships, even if they're also introverted, they can be energized by people, so they can look like extroverts, even if they are introverted. And the final dichotomy is rational versus irrational. And this is similar to the judging versus perceiving dichotomy in the Myers-Briggs. It's important to remember that being an irrational type in no way implies that you are an illogical person that's incapable of thinking reasonably. Rational types in socionics have a harder time than irrational types to deviate from their intended path. They need to plan their activities, understand what's happening, and be able to see the result. Whereas irrational types in socionics, it's easier for them to deviate from the plan. It's harder to get an irrational type to plan in detail each of the steps that they're going to do. They're more easily diverted from their intended path if circumstances change, and they tend to be more flexible and adaptable. And just a case in point here, Elena and I are both rational types. So when we plan this YouTube video, we each planned for a couple of hours. We typed in word for word what we were going to say, and planned it all out in detail. And what are we going to say? What order are we going to say it in? How long should it be? Rather than, whereas an irrational type would just say, oh, let's just start talking and let's just record the thing. We had a need to actually practice it. So that's kind of a real life example of how that dichotomy works.
Yes, and it's just a very short video, but we put so many hours into this, and when you know too much, it's hard to distinguish what exactly to say to new people so they understand what you're talking about. Anyway, yeah, socionics is not a psychology. So it's not Myers-Briggs, and it's not a psychology. We don't try to go into the situational elements like psychologists would do, and try to understand those emotional issues with the person. So we use minimum intuitive and emotional, and we use maximum of logical and factual. Laura?
Yeah, so I just want to mention that socionics really goes after the core of each individual. We look at the unique ways in which people process information, and we all naturally process information in different ways. Some kinds of information is more easily perceived by us, whereas other kinds of information just kind of tend to pass us by. We tend to value some types of information more than other types of information. And this unique way of information processing has a lot of practical applications out there in the real world. It affects what careers we tend to find fulfilling, what kinds of activities and hobbies we enjoy, what types of people we tend to get along with or have a difficult time dealing with.
Yeah, and we will agree with you that everybody is unique, but you will also agree with us that there is something very common among us. So what is it? Well, we can tell you. All you can do is just to join us, follow monthly meetings, subscribe to our meetup. It's called Minneapolis Socionics Society. It's on the meetup.com. And come to our meetings. Our next meeting will be announced a couple of weeks before. And come join us and play games with us and start practicing.
Yay!
Yay! See ya!
See ya! Yep, hope to see you there.